let us remember .1 apply the Pythagorean theorem. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fraser Nation coming once again with the geometry series. We're going to learn or relearn perhaps a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the Pythagorean theorem. Students will be able to find the side lengths in a right triangle. So remember, a right triangle is a triangle that has one right angle. There's a right angle right there. Anytime you see this box right here inside of a triangle or any other figure, that means 90 degrees. The hypotenuse of a right triangle is across the right angle. So if you are having trouble determining the hypotenuse, just draw an arrow from your 90-degree angle across the triangle. Whatever side that is will be the hypotenuse. Anything else in that triangle is going to be called a leg. Okay. Square rooting a number is the inverse operation, the opposite operation of squaring a number. So if I have something like 10 squared, then I take and square root that. Inverse operation means they cancel. So the square root and that 2 would cancel, and you would just be left with 10. And then the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. You're probably more familiar with this way. Let's go ahead and move on. These are perfect squares. So just like I said with 10 squared, this is the opposite of square rooting something. So these are factors. So if I have something like the square root of 45, for example, 49, then that would turn into the square root of 7 squared, because 49 is 7 squared, and then that will cancel, this will cancel, and then that would be 7. Anytime I have something that's a factor, so say if I have something like the square root of 50, square root of 50 has a factor of 25, so this would be equal to the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. And the thing I can simplify is square root of 25. Square root of 25 is going to be 5 squared, so this would be the square root of 5 squared times the square root of 2. These cancel, and then I would be left with 5 square root of 2. So let's make sure we see this in your notes. You do have to memorize 1 squared to 25 squared. Like if I say quickly in class, what's 21 squared, you need to be able to tell me 441. So make sure you memorize these. Theorem 7.1 is the Pythagorean theorem. We must remember that in a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse, so remember I told you draw your arrow, the square of the hypotenuse, c squared, is going to be equal to the leg squared, and when you add them up, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Or more than likely you're going to see it in this form, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. C always has to be the biggest number. So the only thing that truly matters when you're plugging in has to be c squared. This is going to be your biggest number because the hypotenuse is always the longest side of the triangle. Let's move on. So the Pythagorean triple. Pythagorean triple is a set of 3 numbers that have to be positive numbers that satisfy c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So for example, if I have 3, 4, 5, this is a common Pythagorean triple. C is your biggest number, okay? So once I plug into my Pythagorean theorem, which is c squared equals a squared plus b squared, the only thing that matters is plugging the 5 into c. The 3 and the 4 really doesn't matter. I could have said 4 squared plus 3 squared. On the right side, you're going to get 25, and on the left side, you're going to get 25. So this actually works out. Okay. If I say something like 7, 24, and 25, C has to be your 25 because that's your biggest number. So this is going to be C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So this is going to be 25 squared equals 7 squared plus 24 squared. So this is going to be 625, which is equal to 49 plus 576. And if you plug that in the calculator, you're going to see that that's equal to 625. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. The area of a triangle, and I know you guys have looked at this homework before. The area of a triangle is when you are given a triangle that looks like this, and we have to remember 1/2 base times height. That height has to be perpendicular, okay? So if you look right here, that has to be a right angle, right angle, right angle, and this would have to be a right angle. So if I were doing a triangle like this right here, first and foremost, you would have to figure out what this side, well, if I was using Pythagorean theorem, there would be your leg right there. That's the leg. And a leg right here, you have to split this in half. So that would be 4.5. And this would be 4.5. Because 4.5 is 9. But when you plug in your base right here, that would have been 9. So you'll see in the examples coming up. So identify the unknown side as a leg or hypotenuse, and then find the unknown side length of the right triangle. Write the answer in simplest radical form. So this is basically when you factor something. Okay, so right here, the unknown is going to be x. And remember I told you, if you don't remember what the hypotenuse is, draw an arrow from your right angle. So this is my hypotenuse. So if this is my hypotenuse, then x has to be a leg because it's not the hypotenuse. So we know that x is a leg, and then we need to figure out what x is. So we have c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And we know that the hypotenuse is 5, so we have to say 5 squared equals 3 squared plus x squared. We don't know what x is. We have to simplify, so it's going to be 25. 5 squared equals 25. 3 squared is 9, 3 times 3, plus x squared. Remember, I want to get rid of anything around my x. So if I have a positive 9, that's going to be a negative 9 to get rid of it. Whatever I did to one side, I have to do to the other. So this is 25 minus 9. So I have 16 equals x squared. Well, x still hasn't been solved yet. I have x squared equals 16. And I want to get rid of this square, so the inverse operation is square root. So I want to cancel that and cancel that. But whatever I did to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side. And if you look at your chart, you know that x is equal to 4 squared, because that's what 16 is. Cross these out, so x is equal to 4. Again, number 2, this is your hypotenuse, so x is going to be equal to your hypotenuse. So I have x squared, which is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So x squared is my c squared. I have 6 squared plus 4 squared. So I have x squared equals 36, which is 6 times 6. 4 squared, which is 16. So I have x squared equals 52. You have 52. So how do you get rid of this square right here? Well, you're going to have to square root it. So I have x squared here, and I have the square root of 52, and it has to be simplest form. So once I cross this out, this is going to be x equals. Now, we have to think of a factor that is inside of 52, the factor that I'm thinking about is going to be square root of 4 and the square root of 13. Okay? Well, square root of 4 is going to simplify. This is going to simplify. So x has to be equal to 2 square root of 13, because the square root of 4, if you look on your chart, is going to be 2. So here's your answer. Moving on. So the top of a ladder rests against the wall 23 feet above the ground. So this is the word problem. So we have a wall and it's 23 feet above the ground. And Lord knows I'm trying to draw a straight line up and down. Okay, here's my wall and it's 23 feet above the ground. Okay, the base of the ladder, okay, the base of my ladder, so let's call this the ladder right here. So that's the ladder. The base of it is 6 feet away. Okay, so we know that this is 6 feet, and we want to know what the ladder is. So this is the ladder right here. Let's call this the ladder. And we want to know what how long the ladder is. So that's going to be x. Well, if this is your right angle, this has to be your hypotenuse. So you remember your ladder is equal to the hypotenuse of this triangle that you just created. So we know that that must be c. And so if I have c squared equals a squared plus b squared, plug in stuff you know. So I have x squared is equal to 6 squared plus 23 squared. So now I have x squared equals 36 plus 529. So you have here, what's that going to be? That's going to be 5. It's going to be 6. It's going to be 5. Okay? And so now that I have x squared equals 565, then we want to get rid of this squared in front. So this is going to be x squared square root, and cancel these out, which is equal to the square root of 565. Now remember, I didn't ask for simplest radical form, so you just have to plug this in the calculator. So x is going to be approximately about 23.8 feet. Okay, so the ladder is about 24 feet long. Number 4, the Pythagorean theorem is only true for what type of triangle? Well, if you've noticed, I kept saying right triangle, right triangle, right triangle. So number 4, you have to have a right triangle for the Pythagorean theorem to be true. Let's move on. So consider this 18 feet and consider this 18 feet. So our hypotenuse has to be 18 feet. Our leg is going to be 15, the one that we do know. So I have here c squared equals 18 squared. And our a squared, the one that we do know, let's call that 15 feet, plus b squared, which is going to be h squared. Okay. So you have here now 324, which is equal to 225 plus h squared. Subtract your 225 from each side. I always want to see you cross things out because it makes things a little easier. And then you're going to have here 99. So that means that the square root of 99 is going to be equal to h. Okay, square root of 99. Okay, are we done? No. The only thing we've done is figured out what our h is. So now we have 1/2 base times height. So in your calculator, you're going to type in 0.5 or 1/2, however you prefer, times 30, okay, times the square root of 99, which is your height, okay? So when you figure out all three of those things, which you already knew the base, and you had to figure out what h is, then you're going to figure out that this is going to be about 149, sorry, pressing this button here, about 149.2 feet squared. So 149.2. Let's try to do number 6 the same way. So if the base here, your base is 20, okay? Your height, you don't know yet, so let's say base is 20 inches. Let's see right here, across your right angle, so your hypotenuse is 26 inches. And so now you have a leg, and your leg, remember, you got to split this up into two. So this is going to be 10 inches, and that's going to be 10 inches. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. You have 26 squared equals 10 squared plus h squared. Okay? And so now, when you do that, you're going to have 767, which is equal to 100 plus h squared. Subtract your 100. So you have 576, which is equal to h squared. And then if you square root both sides, because you want to get rid of that square for your h, cross that out. 576 is on your chart. If you remember, h is equal to 24. Okay, now am I done? No. Because now you have to do 1/2 your base times your height. So we've already determined that our base is 20. And then our height is 24. And so half of 20 is going to be 10. So we know that this has to be 240 inches squared. Okay? So that's how you do that part in the homework. If you have questions, ask me in class. And finally, the last two things, find the unknown side length. So real quick, we can just go ahead and figure what these things are. So these are both my hypotenuse. So x is going to be my c squared. So this is going to be x squared equals 9 squared plus 12 squared. So it's going to be x squared equals 81 plus 144. That is a 4, I promise. So now I have x squared, which is equal to 235. I'm so sorry. And so when we square root both sides, this is x squared equals the square root of 225, which is on your chart. Remember, these cancel out, so x is going to be equal to 15. And then right here, you have c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So you have x squared, which is equal to 48 squared, which is not on your chart, so just go ahead and plug that into the calculator, plus 14 squared. So now we have x squared equals to 2,304 plus 196, which is in your chart. And so now we have x squared equals 2,500. And then if you were to cancel this square by square rooting it, whatever you did to one side, you got to do to the other side. And so the square root of 2,500, if you plug in the calculator, is going to be equal to 50. So I know it's kind of a long and arduous process. There's a lot of examples, but give your homework another shot. See if you can do the area of a triangle, and I'll talk to you later.